If you watched Pawn Stars anytime between 2011 and 2015, you probably remember Rebecca Romney. She was the rare book expert who seemed to glide into the gold and silver pawn shop with a quiet confidence, a calm voice, and a mind that could outwit even the most seasoned collectors. She was the one Rick Harrison trusted when a centuries-old manuscript or a mysterious letter landed on the counter. To viewers, she was the book lady, the expert who could spot a forgery from across the room, who never lost her cool, and who always seemed to know more than she let on. But what if I told you that the Rebecca you saw on TV was only part of the story? That behind the scenes there was a darker, more complicated truth, one that Rebecca herself never shared on camera, and one that changed the course of her life forever. Let's start with what you think you know. Rebecca Romney was born in Phoenix, Arizona in 1985. She didn't grow up surrounded by rare books or ancient manuscripts. In fact, she once joked that old books were just dust and dead trees. Her real passion was language. She dreamed of becoming a philosopher or a translator, not a book dealer. By the time she was 22, she'd mastered 5.5 languages, including Latin and ancient Greek. She was the kind of student who would spend 12 hours a day decoding ancient texts, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Her professors at Brigham Young University were stunned by her ability to translate a 300 BC Greek papyrus for a final exam. She graduated with honors, her thesis comparing centuries-old fragments of Plato's Republic. Nobody, not even Rebecca, could have predicted that this obsession with language would one day make her a star on reality TV. But here's where the story takes its first unexpected turn. In 2007, fresh out of college, Rebecca applied for what she thought was a management job at Bauman Rare Books in Philadelphia. She almost walked out of the interview when she realized the position was for a rare book specialist, a field she knew nothing about. But instead of leaving, she admitted her inexperience. Her honesty, combined with her language skills, landed her the job. Within months, she was handling books worth more than most people's homes: a Shakespeare folio from 1623, a page from the Gutenberg Bible, first editions of Newton's Principia Mathematica. She was thrown into a world where a single mistake could cost a fortune, and where trust was everything. By 2010, Rebecca was promoted to gallery manager in Las Vegas. She was just 20. 3 years later, she became the youngest senior director in the company's history, overseeing auctions and private sales totaling over $10 million a year. She wasn't just selling books, she was uncovering forgeries that could have cost collectors millions. Her reputation for honesty and precision spread quickly, and it wasn't long before she crossed paths with Rick Harrison. Unlike most experts on Pawn Stars, Rebecca wasn't found through a casting call. Rick already knew her from the tight-knit world of Las Vegas rare book dealers. When he needed someone who could tell the difference between a $5,000 Civil War bond and a worthless replica, he called Rebecca directly. She wasn't just another TV expert, she was the real deal, hand-picked for her expertise and her integrity. Her first appearance on Pawn Stars was in 2011, and it was unforgettable. She was handed a stack of Civil War-era papers, including a Confederate bond from 1861. In less than 10 minutes, she exposed a forged signature that dropped the value from $10,000 to a few $100. Viewers were hooked. Ratings jumped by 15%. Rebecca became the go-to expert for anything made of paper, books, letters, historical documents. She appraised everything from a $2,000 replica of a Columbus letter to an original broadside of the Declaration of Independence worth $15,000. She even authenticated notes linked to Edgar Allan Poe and handled 19th-century slave trade papers, explaining how to value items tied to painful chapters of history. But as Rebecca's star rose, so did the pressure. The world of rare books is glamorous on the surface, but beneath it lies a minefield of secrets, rivalries, and risks. And as Rebecca would soon discover, not every story has a happy ending. The truth is, the rare book world is a lot like the pawn business itself. It's built on trust but haunted by suspicion. Every item that passes through a dealer's hands carries a story, and sometimes those stories are darker than anyone wants to admit. Rebecca learned this the hard way. As her reputation grew, so did the stakes. She was no longer just authenticating books for private collectors, she was doing it on national television, with millions of viewers watching her every move. The pressure to be perfect was relentless. One mistake, one overlooked detail, could not only cost the shop thousands but also damage her credibility forever. It was during this high-pressure period that Rebecca faced one of the most challenging moments of her career. In 2014, a man walked into the gold and silver pawn shop with what he claimed was a rare 1841 edition of the Book of Mormon. Rebecca examined it carefully, noting its age, condition, and provenance. She estimated its value at $40,000, but the seller wanted $100,000. After some negotiation, Rick Harrison managed to buy it for $24,000 a steal, or so it seemed. But soon after the episode aired, whispers began to circulate online. Rumors spread that the book had been stolen from the Marriott Library at the University of Utah. The story gained traction on Reddit and YouTube, with some claiming that federal agents had stepped in, seized the book and left the pawnshop with nothing. The truth behind these rumors was murky. There was never an official statement from the FBI or the History Channel. No charges were made public, but the damage was done. For the first time, Rebecca's judgment was under a cloud of suspicion. She had built her career on being the person who could spot a fake or a stolen item before anyone else. Now people were asking, how could a stolen book make it onto national TV without anyone noticing? Was Rebecca to blame, or was she just caught in the crossfire of a much bigger problem? Behind the scenes, the pressure was immense. Rebecca was questioned by federal agents, not as a suspect but as an expert. They wanted to know how stolen historical books could slip through the cracks, how provenance could be faked, and what safeguards were in place to prevent these kinds of mistakes. For Rebecca, it was a wake-up call. She realized that even the most careful expert could be blindsided by a clever forger or a determined thief. The experience shook her confidence and made her question everything she thought she knew about the business. But the fallout didn't end there. In January 2015, Rebecca appeared on what would be her last episode of Pawn Stars. She appraised a pirate book from 1734, valued it at $1,000, and watched as Rick bargained the price down to $400. There was no farewell, no explanation. She simply vanished from the show. Fans were left with questions. Had she been fired? Was it because of the Book of Mormon scandal? Or was there something else going on behind the scenes? Online forums exploded with speculation. Some believed Rebecca had left after a personal tragedy. Others pointed to growing criticism of the show itself, accusations of staged deals, faked appraisals, and behind-the-scenes conflicts. But the truth was more complicated. Rebecca never removed Pawn Stars from her LinkedIn profile. She still listed herself as their rare book expert, even years after her last appearance. Some saw this as a marketing move, a way to keep her name in the public eye. Others suspected it was part of a non-disclosure agreement, a legal requirement to stay silent about what really happened. What most viewers didn't realize was that Rebecca's departure was as much about self-preservation as it was about scandal. The rare book world is fiercely competitive, and reputations can be destroyed in an instant. After the FBI incident, Rebecca knew she needed to protect her name, her career, and her future. She moved to Philadelphia for a promotion, became senior director at Bauman Rare Books, and later co-founded her own company. She built a new life far from the cameras and the constant scrutiny of reality TV. But even as she moved on, the questions lingered. Why did she leave so suddenly? Was it really just career growth, or was she running from something darker? And what did she learn from her time on Pawn Stars that she never shared with the public? To understand the full weight of what Rebecca carried, you have to look beyond the headlines and the rumors. The rare book world is a place where history, money, and ego collide. Every transaction is a test of trust, and every expert is only as good as their last call. For Rebecca, the Book of Mormon incident wasn't just a professional crisis, it was a personal reckoning. She had always prided herself on her ability to see through deception, to find the truth hidden in the margins. But now she was forced to confront the limits of her own expertise. How do you protect yourself from mistakes when the stakes are so high? How do you keep your integrity intact when the world is watching, waiting for you to slip? Rebecca's answer was to double down on what made her different. She refused to let fear or scandal define her. Instead, she poured her energy into her work, determined to prove that her reputation was built on more than just a TV show. In Philadelphia, she took on new challenges, handling library acquisitions and catalogs for some of the world's most prestigious collections. She became known not just as a dealer, but as a detective, someone who could trace the provenance of a book back centuries, uncovering stories that others had missed. Her expertise became her shield, her way of reclaiming control in a world that often felt unpredictable. But even as she rebuilt her career, Rebecca never forgot the lessons she learned on Pawn Stars. She saw firsthand how easily the line between authenticity and forgery could blur, how even the most trusted experts could be fooled. She began to speak out about the darker side of the rare book trade, the forgeries, the thefts, the hidden scandals that most dealers preferred to ignore. She warned her colleagues that the industry needed better safeguards, more transparency, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Not everyone wanted to listen. Some saw her as a troublemaker, someone who was rocking the boat, but others recognized her courage and her commitment to integrity. Rebecca's journey wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. She used her platform to advocate for women in the rare book world, a field still dominated by older men. In 2017, she co-founded the Honey and Wax Book Collecting Prize, a $1,000 award given each year to women under 30 who had assembled the most original and surprising book collections. The prize wasn't about money, it was about recognition, about giving young women the confidence to call themselves collectors. Rebecca knew from experience how hard it was to break into the inner circles of the antiquarian world, and she wanted to make it easier for the next generation. Her advocacy didn't stop there. Rebecca became a mentor, teaching at the antiquarian book seminars and sharing her knowledge with aspiring dealers from around the world. She spoke openly about the challenges she had faced, the pressure, the scrutiny, the moments of doubt. She told her students that the rare book trade was not always as glamorous as it seemed, that it required resilience, humility. Her honesty was refreshing in an industry that often prized secrecy over transparency. But perhaps the most important lesson Rebecca learned was about the power of stories. She realized that every book, every artifact, carried a narrative that was bigger than any one person. The real value of her work wasn't just in the objects she appraised, but in the histories she uncovered and preserved. She saw herself as a guardian of memory, someone who could give voice to the forgotten and the overlooked. This sense of purpose became her guiding light, helping her navigate the uncertainties of her profession and the shadows of her past. Still, the question remained. What was the dark truth that Rebecca never shared on Pawn Stars? Was it the fear of making a mistake on live TV? The knowledge that even the best experts could be deceived? Or was it something deeper? A realization that the world she loved was more fragile, more complicated than she had ever imagined? The answer, as with most things in Rebecca's world, isn't simple. The dark truth she carried was layered, built from years of experience, mistakes and revelations. It was the understanding that expertise is never absolute, that even the most trusted authorities are vulnerable to error, and that the rare book world, like the pawn business, is built on a foundation of uncertainty. For every genuine treasure that passed through her hands, there was always the possibility of a hidden flaw, a missing page, a forged signature. The pressure to be perfect was relentless, and the consequences of failure could be devastating. Rebecca's time on Pawn Stars taught her that the line between authenticity and illusion is razor thin. The show's format demanded quick decisions, snap judgments, and confident appraisals. But real expertise takes time. It requires research, consultation, and sometimes a willingness to say, "I don't know." On television, there's little room for doubt. The audience wants answers, and the producers want drama. Rebecca found herself caught between the demands of entertainment and the realities of her profession. She knew that every word she spoke would be scrutinized, every decision second-guessed. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced before. This tension came to a head during the Book of Mormon incident. Rebecca had done everything by the book. She examined the item, checked its provenance, and gave her honest opinion. But the truth is, even the best experts can be fooled by a clever forger or a determined thief. The rare book world is full of stories about items with murky histories, objects that have changed hands so many times that their origins are almost impossible to trace. Rebecca realized that no amount of expertise could guarantee absolute certainty. There would always be risks, always be unknowns. This realization was both humbling and liberating. It forced Rebecca to confront her own limitations, to accept that perfection was an impossible standard. She began to see her role not as an infallible authority, but as a guide, someone who could help others navigate the complexities of the rare book world, even if she didn't have all the answers. This shift in perspective changed the way she approached her work. She became more open about the challenges and uncertainties of her profession, more willing to share her doubts and her mistakes. Rebecca's honesty resonated with others in the industry. She found that her willingness to admit uncertainty made her more trustworthy, not less. Collectors and colleagues appreciated her transparency, her refusal to pretend that expertise was a shield against error. She became a sought-after speaker at conferences and seminars, where she shared her insights on authentication, provenance, and the ethics of the trade. Her reputation for integrity grew, even as she distanced herself from the spotlight of reality TV. But the dark truth Rebecca never shared on Pawn Stars went beyond the technical challenges of her profession. It was also about the personal cost of living under constant scrutiny. The fame that came with the show was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it opened doors, brought new opportunities, and allowed her to reach a wider audience. On the other, it exposed her to criticism, jealousy, and the relentless pressure to maintain a flawless image. Every mistake, every rumor, every whisper of scandal was amplified by the glare of the cameras. Rebecca learned to guard her privacy fiercely. She rarely spoke about her personal life, her relationships, or her struggles. She kept her focus on her work, on the books and the stories that mattered most to her. But the toll was real. The anxiety, the sleepless nights, the fear of letting people down, these were the burdens she carried long after the cameras stopped rolling. She knew that her reputation could be destroyed in an instant, that one misstep could undo years of hard work. In the end, Rebecca's greatest strength was her resilience. She refused to let fear or failure define her. She embraced the uncertainty of her profession, the messiness of her own humanity. She understood that the real value of her work wasn't in being perfect, but in being honest, curious, and compassionate. The dark truth she never shared on Pawn Stars was that expertise is a journey, not a destination, a path filled with risks, rewards, and the constant challenge of living up to your own ideals. As Rebecca's life moved further from the bright lights of reality television, she found herself drawn deeper into the world of rare books, not just as a dealer, but as a champion for change. The lessons she learned from her time on Pawn Stars became the foundation for a new chapter, one defined by innovation, advocacy, and a relentless pursuit of truth. She knew that the rare book trade was at a crossroads. The old ways, secrecy, exclusivity, and a reluctance to confront uncomfortable realities were no longer enough. The industry needed transparency, diversity, and a willingness to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Rebecca's response was to build something new. In 2019, she co-founded Type Punch Matrix, a rare book firm in Silver Spring, Maryland, with her partner Brian Cassidy. Their vision was bold, to create a company that broke every mold in the antiquarian world. They didn't just sell expensive books, they curated collections that challenged the status quo, spotlighted overlooked voices, and pushed the boundaries of what a rare book business could be. Their inventory included everything from Shakespeare folios and Gutenberg Bible leaves to radical feminist texts and works by marginalized authors. Rebecca wanted to show that the rare book world could be both elite and inclusive, both traditional and revolutionary. Type Punch Matrix quickly made waves. Within a year they were selling to elite clients, moving pieces worth hundreds of thousands, even millions. But for Rebecca, the real victory was in the stories they uncovered and the communities they built. She worked tirelessly to bring new collectors into the fold, especially women and young people who had long been excluded from the inner circles of the trade. She launched educational initiatives, hosted workshops, and mentored aspiring dealers. Her goal was to democratize the world of rare books, to make it accessible to anyone with a passion for history and a curiosity about the past. Rebecca's advocacy extended beyond her own company. She continued to champion the Honey and Wax Book Collecting Prize, which by 2025 had honored 9 women and inspired countless more. The prize became a symbol of what was possible when barriers were broken and new voices were given a platform. Rebecca saw firsthand how transformative recognition could be, how a single award could change the trajectory of a young collector's life. She made it her mission to ensure that the next generation of book lovers would have opportunities she never had. But Rebecca's impact wasn't limited to the world of collecting. She also became a leading voice in the fight against forgery and fraud. Drawing on her own experiences and the hard lessons of the Book of Mormon incident, she partnered with tech firms to develop cutting-edge tools for authentication. She helped pioneer the use of AI and blockchain to trace provenance, and introduced spectral ink scanners that could detect forgeries with unprecedented accuracy. She brought these innovations into her seminars, teaching hundreds of dealers how to protect themselves and their clients from deception. Rebecca's work in this area was groundbreaking. She understood that the future of the rare book trade depended on trust, and that trust could only be built through transparency and accountability. She wasn't afraid to challenge the old guard, to call out bad actors, or to demand higher standards from her peers. Her courage earned her both admirers and critics, but she never wavered in her commitment to integrity. Through it all, Rebecca remained deeply connected to the stories that first drew her to the world of rare books. She continued to write, publishing books and essays that explored the hidden histories of literature and the people who shaped it. Her 2025 release, Jane Austen's Bookshelf, was a literary bombshell, shining a light on the women writers who had been erased from history. The book was a critical and commercial success, selling over 20,000 copies in its first weeks and earning praise from the New York Times, the Washington Post, and The Guardian. Rebecca's research revealed that only a fraction of 18th-century novels by women survived, compared to those by men, a stark reminder of how easily voices can be lost. Rebecca's journey, from the neon-lit pawn shop counters of Las Vegas to the hushed wood-paneled rooms of elite book societies, is a testament to the power of resilience and reinvention. She never set out to become a television personality, nor did she imagine that her expertise would one day be tested in front of millions. Yet through every twist and turn, she remained true to her core values, honesty, curiosity, and a deep respect for the stories that connect us all. The dark truth she never shared on Pawn Stars was not a single secret, but a collection of hard-won insights about the fragility of reputation, the complexity of authenticity, and the cost of living in the public eye. In 2025, Rebecca's influence reached new heights. She was invited to deliver a lecture at the Grolier Club in New York, the oldest and most exclusive society of book collectors in the country. Her talk, Jane Austen's Bookshelf, Collecting as Investigation, was a culmination of years spent uncovering the forgotten women who shaped literary history. She spoke not just as an expert, but as an investigator, someone who had learned to question the official narratives, to dig beneath the surface, and to challenge the status quo. Her audience, a mix of seasoned collectors and young enthusiasts, listened as she described the thrill of discovery, the heartbreak of loss, and the ongoing battle to preserve voices that history tried to erase. Rebecca's work at Type Punch Matrix continued to break new ground. The company expanded into museum consulting, helping institutions diversify their collections and spotlight overlooked authors. In 2024, her team curated an exhibit on 18th-century Black writers, bringing long-neglected stories into the light. She also led a record-breaking sale, helping the Lilly Library acquire 2,000 romance novels for $250,000 in just 16 hours. These achievements were more than business wins, they were statements of purpose, proof that the rare book world could evolve without losing its soul. Yet, for all her public accomplishments, Rebecca remained intensely private. She rarely spoke about her personal life, even as fans speculated about her relationships, her marriage, and her ties to political dynasties. She kept the focus on her work, her students, and the books that had become her life's passion. In interviews, she brushed off questions about fame, insisting that her real legacy would be measured not in television ratings, but in the stories she helped save and the people she inspired. The shadow of Pawn Stars never fully disappeared. Fans still debated the circumstances of her departure, still wondered about the rumors and the scandals. But Rebecca refused to let the past define her. She understood that every public figure is, in some sense, a character, shaped by editing, by perception, by the expectations of an audience. The Rebecca Romney on television was real, but she was also a performance, a version of herself crafted for the demands of reality TV. The real Rebecca was more complicated, more vulnerable, and ultimately, more human. Her story is a reminder that expertise is not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It's about the courage to admit what you don't know, the humility to learn from your mistakes, and the integrity to stand by your principles even when it's hard. The dark truth Rebecca never shared on Pawn Stars is that the pursuit of knowledge is always a risk, always a leap into the unknown. But it's also what makes the journey worthwhile. As the rare book world continues to change, Rebecca's influence endures. She has inspired a new generation of collectors, scholars, and storytellers to look beyond the surface, to value the voices that history tried to silence, and to approach every discovery with both skepticism and wonder. Her legacy is not just in the books she authenticated or the scandals she survived, but in the culture of openness and curiosity she helped create. In the end, Rebecca Romney's greatest contribution may be her willingness to embrace uncertainty, to live with the knowledge that even the most trusted experts can be wrong, and that every story, no matter how well documented, contains mysteries waiting to be uncovered. That is the dark truth she carried, and the gift she leaves behind, a reminder that the search for truth is never finished, and that the most valuable treasures are often the ones we almost overlook.